Good evening, good evening, good evening. What up, what up, what up? Welcome to the 1,500 and something show, y'all. We finally made it. We made it over this long hump. And I want to say that you are listening to the episode of D Block Church on Purpose Kingdom Network. I am your girl, Adrian Misunderstandings Allen. And as always, I take great pleasure in welcoming you to D Block Church. If you are someone that is new to D Block Church, then you may just know me as Misunderstood Adrian. But if you've been through the wire, you've been through the fire with us, then you understand that this Adrian Misunderstandings Allen has grown into something other than what it is that we began in the very, very beginning. And I thank God for that, because it's all about the new beginning. It's all looking at something different, the way that we looking at what we had in the very beginning and then looking at it and then trying to do something different. So tonight, what I would like to do is I would like to introduce you to the new and up and coming show called The Acts of Life. Now, some out there can relate to each and every character that you will be introduced to this evening. And what I am asking of you to do is to call in and join in and give your comments, give your feedback. Let's develop these people if there needs to be more than is already in store. But for this evening, you got 319-527-6091 as the contact number to get me on Blog Talk. There's also a way that you can follow me on, I don't know what happened on Facebook today, y'all. So I'm going to put the disclaimer out there. First off, foremost, Adrian Allen is going to be gone from Facebook until we get Adrian Allen fixed on Facebook. So let's just say that after this evening, we should have like a nice funeral for Adrian Allen on Facebook. That way, whatever happens with her coming forward, it will be coming a Misunderstood Adrian all the way around. That way we can out with the old, in with the new type of a thing, but we'll also be able to mark today as the day that we started this thing anew. So without further ado, I do welcome you to D Block Church. If this is your first time at the Kingdom, you need to know that it's going down at the PK. It's been going down at the PK, and we got 1,499 episodes plus some to show you. So you can check them out at www.blogtalkradio.com/Purpose Kingdom and go in and have a little time with yourself. Because one thing that I can say that Purpose Kingdom Network has been doing from the very, very beginning is putting it out there, making it plain, and actually giving you an opportunity at the end of the night to know and walk away with a better relationship with who God is in your life. A better relationship of why Christ actually walked and talked and taught and preached and used the lessons of his life as an example for us to still continuously live still now in 2021. So I would like to introduce you to the acts of life. How can I say this in a nice way so that everyone can get it? It is not about the start, but it is everything about the finish. So think about where you are, think about where you want to be, and think about where you've come from in order to understand that regardless of how you've lived your life, regardless of where you call yourself being in your life, those acts of your life have been ordered. Whether you liked it or not, whether you understood it or not, but everything is already predestined for us before we get here. So the easiest it is for us to understand that, the better it is, or the easier it becomes, so that we can understand what it looks like to live the acts of life. Now, before I jump into the actual characters of the actual story, let's talk about what's going on right now in America that we need to speak on, because as you all know, today is September 9th, 2021. If you are someone that has been under a rock for the last 20 something years, you know that September 11th is an anniversary of memorable death, as I would say. We memorialize this tragedy to the point where we live this tragedy every year. So this year, before we actually get to 911, let me put it in your ear to know that within the acts of life, things happen, people come, people go. But as long as you are still standing and you are still breathing, you then become an example of what it looks like to have an act of life that God is actually smiling down on. So if you heard what your president said today, he explained to the people about the whole shot and the COVID vaccine and how the boosters are going to be implemented to help you, and setting it up so that you know from the rest of your life when the booster shows up and the scientist says that it is ready for approval, they expect you to go line up and get the next shot. So that's going to be the new thing now. Did you get your shot? Well, what about your booster? Have you gotten your second booster? Well, you know, they just came out with a third booster. You need that booster to get in. So, right. So regardless of how you want to look at that situation, today was a big day for America because he stood in front of the podium and he let the world know that he was resting on the fact that when the scientists come out with this booster shot, that we should all run and go get it. I'm not here to tell you whether you should run and go get the shot or whether you should not, but I will let you know that the acts of life are important, and how you learn to live your life becomes exactly what it is for you. Important not only for you, but important for your lineage, important for what it is that you determined that you're going to leave for the next person. Determines whether or not you are actually going to have the ability to be able to look up and say, you know what, you actually did something that made a difference, and we appreciate what you've done. Your lineage will remember you. My shout out to my mentor, Antonio G. Smith Jr., who always says that if you don't do something phenomenal, they won't remember you for generations to come. After your children die, your story dies with them. You don't really want to be one of those people. However, a lot of us are living those types of lives right now. So until we actually begin to see what it looks like to maybe live those types of lives, we won't be able to make a conscious decision to want to change, to want to be the change that we need to see. So if you're out there and you'd like to join me live on the air, the number to call in is 319-527-6091. If you are on the Facebook or on the YouTube, it looks like there's a Facebook situation. I'm telling you, y'all gonna have to get rid of them Facebooks of me. Anything me associated with Facebook, just kill it, because I don't know what's going on with it, and I'd rather just start all over afresh, because guess what? Sooner or later, you'll realize that when things get so bad, what usually happens is they die. We want to cry when things die. However, we see life when things die. When things are taken away, we end up having to look at the things that we have and reevaluate how we have them, or do we have them at all, or was this just a figment of my imagination because I think that I had it, or I felt like I had it. So it all really boils down to how you're acting in the midst of what's going on. So the act of life is based really on several different people with several different lives that all link up in one church. Now, I know someone probably just said, what? Yes, no. I grew up in the church. So if there's going to be a story that comes out of my mind, it's going to have to come back to the church. Because why? Because I believe that where you began is where you will finish. The difference is what have you learned along the way that becomes in then your testimony or your story or the thing that you call your claim to fame, the thing that people will then know about you. Do they know your beginning? Do they know the demise? Or do they know the after, through, conquered, on top with the rising story? So the first character that I would like to introduce to you this evening goes by the name of Michael. Now, I'm not sure about you, but there's a lot of people that I know in my life that I've come in contact with the name of Michael. So shout out to all the Michaels that I know, because each and every one of them will think that, oh yeah, this is me, that's me, that's me, until we actually go through the life that Michael lives. And when we realize that we want to resonate with something or someone, but we realize that we don't breathe the same way. We don't live that life. Sometimes it's not our life to be lived. And what we find in Michael is that Michael just starts rough, like a regular kid, just out there doing his thing, but having to learn how to fight through the street, having to learn how to survive. Michael is that kid that we see in church, and he does what we need him to do in church. However, when we're not in church and you kind of drive by the bar, you see this, he's the kid that hangs out outside of the bar. You don't want to say anything about him hanging at the bar because you see him on Sunday morning with his grandmother. So therefore, you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt and think, well, he'll be fine. And so when you see Michael and you meet Michael, Michael is already going through his life. He's already going through his acts. And what ends up happening is the more people see of Michael, the more people are determining a story and an outline and an outcome and a finish for Michael. What then ends up happening with that is, of course, if you've ever known any kid that looked like they were going the wrong way or hanging with the wrong crowd, and if you didn't know the adult, or you aren't that adult that actually goes over and stops that child from doing whatever it is that they're doing, more than likely that kid's not ever going to get that lesson, right? We're going to find that kid in another situation before you know it. And then before you know it, it's too many situations. And when they do go to help Michael out of this situation, Michael ends up running into a major situation that causes him to actually get locked up. And when he gets locked up, I mean, I guess, you know how people say that you can be doing something and everything is so, because of the fact that you're out and you're about, you got so much stuff going, you got life coming at you in all different directions. And because of this, you can kind of pay attention to everything that's going on around you, but you're missing what God is saying. Sometimes if you live that type of a life, you'll realize that what ends up happening is you become incarcerated. If not incarcerated, like locked up, you might become sick in some sort of way that puts you into a different predicament so that you can see what life looks like from a standstill position versus the one where you were moving around and doing all that other kind of stuff. So when you run into Michael, the first thing you find about Michael is that Michael is just a regular old kid. He's got a mom who is her mom's name is Mary. Now, Mary is more like I would say, if you want to think about a person, let's say Mary is like the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well who had like the 5 or 6 husbands. But the only difference with Mary is Mary actually had children by each of these men. So now Mary is raising all of these different children. And everyone knows that each child is a spirit. And, the way that those spirits work is now they've all come through Mary, all different men in their spirits coming through Mary, which then makes Mary not such a nice person to deal with because of the fact that she's dealing with so many different spirits and so many different people growing up and then having to raise them and the whole nine and dealing with society. But then there's a situation that Mary has because Mary has this mother. And Mary's mother knows everything about everything. And she knows the ins and the outs of the church and the after church. The church after the church. When after church, they pick up the phone and they can talk for like 20, 30 minutes, about what so-and-so had on and what so-and-so had. And forget about the word that was preached because we ain't really going to talk about that. But that's what that's how Mary's mom shows up. So at the end of the day, you got Michael, who is just the product of his own environment. Mary, who is unfortunately living this life that she's screaming out for all kinds of help and things. But because of the fact that she has this type of mother who is connected inside and out, she can't really deal with the real situations that she's dealing with because there's only but a certain amount of info that mom wants to give off or mom is willing for the church to know, considering that she is the ins and the outs of the church. So regardless of how the situation looks, regardless of what it may look like to other congregants, she makes sure that she implements the situation in the way that it needs to go so that everybody can understand the situation. And it's the way that it seems in her world. That would be the way that I explain Mary's mom. Now, I'm sure that someone out there is already trying to put the pieces together and they're trying to figure it out. That's why it's called the acts of life, because trust me, when you pay attention to it, every single person in their act is dealing with something that we've all dealt with. We know someone that is dealing with it, or we are actually going through it in the process right now as we speak. So if you are out there and you are interested, you want to talk, you want to even think about what might just be going on in the acts of life, I encourage you to call in. 319-527-6091 is the number. The way you do it is you press 1. That cues the board to let the board know that you would like to speak. Then they will let me know. I will bring you in, and then you will hear a beep. And when you hear your beep, that means it is then your turn to speak. 319-527-6091 again is that number. And again, like I said, I apologize about the Facebook. I don't know what even to say about it. However, right now you can catch me live on my Misunderstood YouTube page, and that's MS Understood Adrian, MSUNDERSTOOD Adrian. That's how we get it for right now. Meanwhile, y'all already know www.blogtalkradio.com/Purpose Kingdom. You can click the button and you will be able to hear us live. You will be able to interact with us live. And sometimes, however you need to get in is what we're calling for you to do today. So you got Mike, you got Mary, and you got her mother. Now, on the whole aspect of the way that this starts, mind you, I told you, it's coming into the fact that we need to focus on different relationships that we do have outside of our lives, like in the church and outside of the church. But it's all a form of our lives. So The next person that I would like to know about is Pastor Jackson. Now, Pastor Jackson is the pastor of Mount St. Olives Baptist Church. Okay. Yeah, I know. The name is like the name. But think about the man who's ran a church for over 30 years. I mean, he has been the shepherd over this house for over 30 years. So Michael, he has watched grow up. Mary, he has watched grow up. And because of the fact that he has been there and has watched these lives already transpire, Pastor Jackson plays a very, very, very big part in the acts of life. Now, Pastor Jackson actually gets to go out like a champ in the manner of, if you were to ever see a minister who talks about walking around heaven all day and how joyous that moment will be and how grandiose it will sound and what will happen and how it will work. Pastor Jackson, to me, takes all acclaims by the way he meets the Savior. Not only does he meet the Savior, but he sets an example for an entire church family, because being a pastor for 36 years, the one thing that they were not prepared to do was to lead without him. The acts of life become really real. That runs me into the main deacon, the head deacon, Deacon Jimmy. Now, something special about Deacon Jimmy, because Deacon Jimmy has a wife. And of course, there's always the deacon and the deaconess. And the way that they move and the way that they roll in this is that when Pastor Jackson passes, they are then ready to pick up that mantle and move on and keep the church going. Because a lot of people don't realize that what happens is churches grow. Churches grow because of the message that is being preached. But without true evangelism, you're not going out to grab the new life of your church. You're actually bringing that. I don't know what you'll be doing after a while. But after a while, it's just like 36 years of the same preacher, same man, same message, and no one else is there to even step up. That right there is a lesson all within itself, because everyone knows that regardless of whatever you're doing, whatever status, whatever title you have, if you are not in the process of fixing and finding your replacement, then what you're doing right now might not manifest for the next 30 years. Because if you are not the person that is going to be able to do it, you need to make sure that you're setting it up so that the people that come behind you will be able to do just that for you. And that is to step up and do what you need. So the easiest thing for a person to do is want to believe in you. The hardest thing for them to do is actually follow the example that you've left. So what Pastor Jackson did was, Pastor Jackson, not only was he living that life of an example, he taught this word, he preached this word, and he actually was doing everything that he was supposed to do as a shepherd. And it comes down that the other people might not been doing what they were supposed to have done. So how does that really work? In the acts of life, it's all about how you are doing what you're supposed to be doing within the act of your life. So you have Michael, who just, like I said, if you look at Michael, some people might just write him off from the beginning. But when you know their start, sometimes it's not fair for you to write them off in the beginning, because people need to understand who they are. People need to understand why they do what they do and how they do what they do. When that starts to happen, people manifest into the biggest characters of them all. So what I will say in the acts of life is, learn who Michael is. Learn to love the Michaels in your life, because it's going to be the Michaels that save you. It's going to be the Michaels that show up in a different light than what you've seen for the last 20, 30 years. And that is going to be the window that God uses to pour out a blessing. So, of course, like I said, you have deacon and deaconess. They become the backbone of this whole entire thing, because if you look at the way that it was, Pastor Jackson was just there. Pastor Jackson was the heart and soul of everything, but Deacon Jimmy was his right hand man. So if knowing like I know, and knowing how the church goes, that the next person in charge would be the deacon. But then there's something about, in the acts of life, are you called to this act? Or are you appointed to the act? And that becomes the first major problem with Deacon Jimmy. And he's the first person that has to literally confess that, as ready as he should be and as ready as he needs to be, because he's been with Pastor Jackson for all of those years, he is not ready. Nor is he not so much is he not ready, but when it comes down to living the life, working the life, and preaching the life, it's not his life. He wouldn't do it. He's more of the side man. So now his job is to then find who is the next man or woman to pick up this mantle and lead this church. Now, the deacon and deaconess have a daughter. She is a single mother who, like Michael, started in the church. However, I believe that most people that start in the church end up leaving the church one way or the other, or whether it's a church hurt thing, or whether it's just going out to explore, to see what's out there, to see what God has in store. However the case may be, this young lady's name is Kim. Her son's name is Jimmy Jr. or James Jr. And their story resonates with a lot of other women, just because of the single family situation, that single mom raising that teenage boy situation, that single mom that started in the church but then got a little wayward and got a little loose and got a little out of the will of God in her life, and then ends up having to live a life of bad choices, bad decisions, but comes back filled, ready to serve, willing to serve. And when she gets back to the church and realizes that Pastor Jackson is no longer there, it kind of opens up an opportunity to maybe one day live in a different place, because once you grew up in a church that you've been there forever, you don't really see life outside that church. And especially if you are a kid that grew up in that church and then you leave and you go out, you do the world, you see how the world treats you. Once you realize that the world is not a pretty place, it usually brings you back home into the building. And when Kim gets back in the building, Kim realizes that she can sing. So she likes to stick with what she knows. So she sticks with the choir. She says that she's making the conscious effort to help the choir, because believe it or not, y'all know I'm not going to have a story about the church without music, because it's big, big, big. Because right now you're looking at mega churches that have been built off of the backs of choirs. And that's a true statement. not off the word of God, but off the backs of good choirs, good good services, good jamming. Oh, they was kicking it. They don't know what they was talking about. They don't know who they were singing for, and there was no praise going up in it. But they was kicking, they was jamming, and they was clapping hands. And so you see that through Kim and how she's trying to bring a friend in. She has a friend named Tiffany who really truly wants to be the video vixen. I mean, she is auditioning every other day, showing up very scantily dressed. However, she's in the age of, it really doesn't matter what other people think. It just matters what God is saying as he's looking at me and as he's speaking to me. So Tiffany is, I don't want to say that Tiffany is Kim's savior, but Tiffany comes through like the woo when Kim calls her. Put it that way. If you ever been in a situation where you need someone to be there to be your passenger, your ride or die, the person that you need to show up at the event because you don't want to go by yourself, that's who Tiffany is. Now, Tiffany also has, like I said, this dream of being the video vixen. So you end up seeing that part of it as well. How many of us are extremely talented, male, female, but yet when it comes down to paying your bills and things of that nature, you do stuff in nightclubs or you play at this bar because you need to supplement what you don't get at the church because you only work at the church for one Sunday and they pay you or they don't pay you. You're a singer and it's volunteer. So after a while, you're just continuously serving, but there is no payoff. So what Tiffany shows you is that the person that is trying to live the double life, that dual life, ends up running into other situations that don't really need to happen in life. Once you get into the groove of things and once you get into a praise situation, you kind of know how to praise your way out of situations. So what Tiffany ends up doing is showing us how that looks like to still be able to do it and really have real life. So if you are just joining us, what we are doing is we are meeting the people. We are meeting the characters, the cast of the Acts of Life. Now, who they are is very important. What they are is a little bit more important. Where will you meet them and when is the last and final thing that we will discuss. Now, you have Kim, Jimmy, and Tiffany, who are not main characters, but they go through so much stuff that you'll still be able, I swear, to resonate with them. If not you, then you'll know exactly who that person is in their situation in that life. Then you have a brother named Corey. Now, Corey is the special in this whole entire situation, the way I see it. Why? There's always someone that just has a beautiful life. Okay? Corey was adopted young, and his mom was unable to have the children. So she was extremely ecstatic to get Corey. So in all of this excitement, Corey wants for nothing. Corey never has to stand up for herself. Corey never needs to do anything but make a phone call. If he can get the phone call and to call his mama, Cheryl, then Cheryl gonna handle the deal. It's just how that works. If you got a Cheryl in your life, then you know what it's like to call Cheryl, and then Cheryl just comes through. So Corey is that kid. Corey is actually with Cheryl all the way up until college. He gets an opportunity to go and try out to be the starting lineman at one of those schools down south. But unfortunately, the day before the actual Columbine, I guess you would say, or workout, he pulls his knee. He twists he tears his ACL. So then, of course, he has to recoup and he has to do all the things that he needs to do. So he takes pain pills. And yes, just like everyone else with a pain pill, he takes a pain pill, but then gets caught on a pain pill and can't get past his pain pill. He realizes that now his pain pill is better than any kind of sport that he would have played, because he can't play the sport because his knee is never going to be right. Before you know it, poor Corey has now gone into a downward spiral where he not only is addicted to these pain pills, but he has a really heavy drinking problem. Now, the blessing of it is, of course, because when you're in your worst situation in life, God always has a way of showing up and bringing that ram in the bush. So Corey meets a woman who falls in love with him and loves him to the point where she loves him through his opioid addiction, and she loves him through his alcoholism, and she speaks on marriage, and he sees her in a way that he's never really seen a woman before. So what Corey then does is Corey embodies this entire life of, it's not about the start, but it's everything about the finish. Because what did he start with? He might not have right now, but there's a way that he can manifest, keep going, and end up with something else. So someone is living that life right now where you've had it great and something happened. And whatever that something was that happened, you can't allow that something to be who you are. It can't determine the rest of your life. So what Corey's story does is gives everyone the opportunity to see that no matter where you are in this thing, it's not over until it's over. Now they say it's not over till the fat lady sings. Well, I don't see fat people, so I can't see anybody fat singing on my stuff. So understand that when Corey shows up, Corey shows you a difference between, it's not about the start, it is about my finish. And you ain't got to look at me in my middle and talk about me. Just pray about me and let me hold on. Now, Corey's wife she's one of those little Georgia peaches. I'll call her Georgia peach. Just everything she sees is sunshine. She sees no glory. She sees no pain or nothing wrong with anything. She's always trying to make it good. Always trying to make it great. Do you know someone in your life that is always trying to make it great? I mean, sometimes it's good to embrace the bad stuff. That way you can go on and move on with it. But God forbid, shout out to the Trinas in the world, because if you know someone that will not allow you to sit in the negative, you then end up applauding them in the long run. So what we learn about Trina is that Trina is not only the support, but she is a very strong, present help. And sometimes when we are in our own struggle, that's what we need. We need that kind of support. We need somebody that can look over and speak life into our situation, regardless of where it is, and see how it is. Now, Corey finds out some really, really crazy information throughout this entire thing. But that's what makes the acts of life for Corey so real, because most of the things that happen to you in life are just the things that happen to you. The main reason, or the main what's important is, how do you handle what happens to you? How do you handle what comes? Because when it comes, do you run? Do you bitch? Do you complain? Do you just like, this doesn't happen, and then as a woe is me, and now we can't focus on what the situation is at hand because we still focusing on this and focusing on that and focusing on this? Well, the acts of life don't allow Corey to get that far deep into his situation. We thank God for Trina, because we realize that through love, anything is possible. If someone loves you through your pain, through your hurt, through your heartache, anything is possible. That's what you need. That's what you want. You need to want to be able to know and look and see who are the people that are really in your corner. I want shout out to the person who is trying to figure out if we are on the air or not, if the person is praying, because I don't know if she's praying or not, because I'm not praying. But there's a difference in the difference of prayer that comes from after you realize that the acts of life is here. No one gets a choice in the way that they live the life. It's just actually the life that is going to be lived. So when you have all of these 6 different people that I'm speaking on, there are 2 extra characters in this in this situation that I believe that you need to have just so that things can make sense. Because a lot of times it could be the beggar at the Wawa or at your local convenience store that's speaking a good word into your life when you open the door, or asking you to speak a good word into their life as you are coming into the store. Regardless of the case, each and every person plays a role in the act of life. So these are just the very, very beginning introductions of these people. But it is to let you know that you fit in these acts of life. Regardless of how you look at it one day, the next day is your day to fit into the story. If you can't find the place for you, that says that you're not being honest about who you really are. Because as we live our lives, we realize that everything is not always good. Everything is not always bad. But everything is always everything. And the more that we learn to resonate with everything, that's when it becomes easier to do, easier to see, easier to understand, easier to become the example for somebody else to make it through whatever it is that they're going through. So the acts of life, who are they? Each and every single one of us is one of these people. What are we going through? Everything. Why do we call it the act of life? Because regardless of how you look at it, it's all within the acts. If you want to find it, it's in there. Because when you start to look at it and walk the thing through, you'll realize the things that you need to do versus the things you don't need to do. What we've realized when Mike shows up, there's so many people that know Mike's story that they can't see Mike in the current position that he's in right now. Now, I don't know who's out here that's listening to me right now that knows that they know they don't even stand the way that they used to back in the day. But people will get caught up in the who they think that you are versus the who that you've become. And what the acts of life does is gives each and every one of us an opportunity to stand up and say, that is what God is trying to say. Tap, I see you there. Yeah, you're on the right one. Look, yeah, she said me. Because at the end of the day, we all have a part to play. The question is, do you know how to play the game? Do you know whose team you're on? And do you know the position that you're playing in the play? The acts of life is something that we all will have to encounter in the course of our day. In the course of our lives, we will all have to be able to see whether or not this serves me or it serves a greater purpose in me. When you meet Mike, you realize that Mike is just like those kids that we see on the street every day waiting on someone to say something to them, waiting on someone to lean on them in a manner that makes them feel different than everyone else. You realize that Mike has that relationship. And because of that relationship, his start is nowhere like his finish. And for someone that's out there tonight that's listening, I believe that that is the message that I need you to hear and take home with you. It's not about your start, but it's everything about your finish. So regardless of what it looks like, regardless of where you are sitting in the situation, in the scenario, regardless of how you are determining it or how the people are displaying it or explaining it to you, you have to understand that with whatever's happening in these acts of life, that God has your best interest at heart. You got to know that God loved you so much that he actually did exactly what he did, was born of a woman, wrapped himself in flesh, lived, walked, talked, and became the example of what it was like to just be like Christ. Today, it resonates with us even more and more and more. So if you're out there and you don't have a relationship, you don't have a personal relationship with Christ, what we do is we offer something. It's called the call of salvation. And that's basically what it is. You are making a call for your life. You are saying to yourself, you're saying to God, you're saying to the universe, save me, because I need to be saved. There's some things in my life that may not have added up to what was completely right. But there's some things in my life that regardless of how they look, God is already covering, already looking, and already seeing through them. So if you are out there and you don't have a relationship, it's a real simple thing to do. You have to be honest with yourself and honest with God. You ask God to come into your life. You ask God to show up in your fault. You ask God to fix that fault and make you clean, make you clean, make you whole again, as some would say. However, whatever way that God needs to come into your life, you need to know that the opportunity is there for you to ask for forgiveness, ask for the remaking, ask for the remolding, ask for the reshaping, ask for the ordering. You can ask for it all. The blessing in asking is that when you do ask, you shall receive. So if you are out there tonight and you've never had a conversation, just repeat after me and say, Father God, I am coming to you as a sinner that is wanting to be made whole. Come into my life. Fix those things that are not of you and make me more like you so that I can then too become an example of what it is to live for you, with you, through you, so that I can become the change that is needed in the world that we live in today. Now, if you said it like that, then you were blessed. If you said it halfway like that, you were blessed. If you even thought in your mind that you wanted to do something different because of the fact that the way that your acts have been going, you know that there's a better way for you on the other side through, and you wanted to do it today. Today was the day. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity to do what it is that you needed to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to ask Chappie to come on. And I'm going to ask Chappie to do what she do, because everyone has a situation. Everyone has a part to play in the act of life and how it all works and how it all correlates there together. So if Chappie is still on the line. Now, wait, if there was any callers, let me see. I'm just moving right now. I'm moving right now. So look, I'm moving right now. If there are any callers, please press 1. and let's bring them on. If not, I'm passing it over to Chappie so that we can go on and get this beautiful call and wrap this Acts of Life up.
Well, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. We just thank and bless God for the word that is going out this evening. You already gave a beautiful call. I don't know why. You always say, I need to finagle the call. She gave the call. I believe by faith that someone out there listening this evening accepted that call and gave their life to Christ. And we encourage that person to find the Bible-believing, teaching, preaching sanctuary where you can grow in the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ and heal from the trials and the tribulations of this world. But until then, bless God. That's why He has Purpose Kingdom Network here just for you. We ask you to join us tomorrow evening at 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. we will be broadcasting live with Evangelist Cheryl Johnson and her ministry In Search of the Truth. Again, at 8:30 p.m. with Evangelist Cheryl Johnson and her ministry In Search of the Truth. Right here on www.blogtalkradio.com/Purpose Kingdom. We invite you to follow us on our social media pages. You can follow us on Facebook as well as on LinkedIn at Purpose Kingdom. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Purpose_Kingdom. Please also feel free to contact us via our webpage, which is www.pkn, P as in Purpose, K as in Kingdom, N as in Network, PKN Radio, where the Lord has blessed that we are able to broadcast gospel music 24 hours a day, as well as rebroadcast of the different ministries from different evenings. We thank and bless God for each and every one of you who joined in with us this evening. Sister Adrian, the Acts of Life. You know, the only thing I could add to what you say is I would have to ask people, which character in this act of life are you? We praise God for the word that is going out this evening. Sister Adrian, the ministry is back in your hands.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Think about it. Which character in this act are you? If that's not a good way to end this broadcast, because what I wanted to do today was to introduce you to the characters of the Acts of Life. What I will say is that this is going to be the new podcast coming out very, very shortly. Before I come back on, I believe that we should have this already in the work. But for right now, these characters are developing and I see them daily. And I'm meeting more people. So, Chap, you're right. The real question is, what character are you? And how will your story match up with this story? Will your story even be a part of this story? I've already told you, each and every person that I come in contact with is a part of this story. So then the question would be, where do you fit in? I heard something, guys. At 8 p.m., there's a new ministry coming. And if y'all don't know about Purpose Kingdom Network, Purpose Kingdom Network been doing this thing for a while. So when you get new blood coming in, you got to come on in and show up for the new blood, because you never know what God is really having in store. You just got to be there. When you decide that you are in the moment, when you decide that this is for you, you're in it. If you've never taken the opportunity to go on PKN Network Radio, like pkn.com, come on, bro. I don't know what you're missing. Come on, sis. All day, 24-hour gospel. It's been a minute. I remember the day that they stripped it away from us so abruptly on the radio. I thank God for PKN. I wake up and I turn it on, and it speaks to me. So if you've never tried it, maybe try it tomorrow. Maybe try to go to bed on it tonight. The definite, what I will say, is it speaks to you. And even if you don't hear it the first time, keep trying. One thing that I've learned about even writing is what we see in the very beginning is really not what it is that we're going to get. It is not the outcome that we are really worried about. It's actually the act of life. It's the daily living that makes it right. So if I could leave us with anything, I would say PKN Network is where you want to be. The acts of life should be every and everywhere. Listen out for it. Facebook, like I said, we're going to strike it or something. I don't even know what to say. Just get rid of it so we can start a new day. But if I could say anything before we leave, I'm telling you, there's a song on PKN radio that runs, y'all. And it doesn't matter where it is, where I'm at in my house. If I hear it, I hear it from the first chord. From the first chord. But the song says, God made me. He made me who I am. God made me. He made me who I am. Then he says, I'm a conqueror. I'm victorious. I won't be stopped. Oh, yeah. I'm a believer. I'm an achiever. I can't be blocked. I won't be blocked. Because God made me. Y'all better go on with yourself. And take that and rest on that. Because if for nothing else, know that where you are is supposed to be exactly where you are. Everything is good. Everything is perfect. Regardless of how you see the situation, it's yours for the taking. So come on, grab some seats, listen out for the acts of life coming to a stream near you. But for D Block Church, Misunderstanding Adrian, and everybody here on PKN Network, we want to say good evening, good night, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching.